I swear I'm going to keep this short. I would first, however, like to thank a few people. Louise Beckett, who's our departmental coordinator, who essentially handles all of the aspects of communication and organization and so forth for the whole department, but also when we have exhibitions. The other part of that team is our gallery and studio coordinator, Richard Scorpio. And I've had many artists I know quite well. Most recently, I just spoke to Joe Abloh, who was a visiting artist here 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, you know, that's the best single show of mine, this is a long painting career, I've ever had, is the one that Richard hung here. It was fun for me to watch Richard work. I brought in the paintings and then stood back. And he would mull it over at night, come in, reorganize it. And I trust his judgment. So to both Louise and Richard, I want to thank you for the work for all of us. I also would like to thank my wife, Barbara, who I owe a great debt to, who has supported my work. It's not been easy. I recognize that these many years, given the fact that we met in 3rd grade and our 40th wedding anniversary is coming up this spring. She's been through it all and she's seen it all. So, thank you. And I would also like to thank the Faculty Research Award Program, funded by the Axel Schuff Fund for Intellectual Life. Last 10 years, I've received grants that this work would not have been much of it possible, especially the trips to Italy for me to work there. And it's really been a terrific program, and I'm very appreciative of the support. As a matter of fact, I will be heading back to Italy this June, thanks in large part to a grant that I was just awarded. Which, actually, see, this is my total written comments here, just to tell you how short things are going to be, brings me to the way the show is organized. I chose 10 years because I thought it was manageable in terms of trying to represent over, for me, a short period of time. 10 years now is like yesterday. I look at these paintings, there's nothing that I'm very far away from in terms of experiencing what was going on. So, yeah, I mean, it's 10 years, the last decade, out of about 47, 48 years painting. So there's a lot of work that sits behind this. One decision that was made, even though the figure is something I've painted my entire life, I studied the figure extensively in art school. I teach anatomy drawing here. I teach a painting course which focuses on the figure. I did not include any of my figure paintings in this. It's just something had to be left out, with the exception of my daughter, who's in that painting riding her bike. But I will say that the figure sits at the center of all of my work. Issues of animation, form, structure, the way things are put together. Those are all things that are central to my interests, which is one reason why I enjoy painting the figure, not as a primary motif, but for what I experience each time I do it. And I take that kicking and screaming back into my other work. I mean, it's no accident to me or surprise that the abstract expressionists met once a week to draw from the figure. There is a kind of primal identity, I think, that one can have doing that. So the thought was, start with the Italian paintings. My first trip to Italy was in '77. Went in '98, 2000, 2002, 7 years, going back. As a matter of fact, the title of my grant application was Return to Tuscany, like a military campaign, Confronting the Muse. I've come to realize, I mean, Italian paintings are a small part body of my work, and yet their influence has been enormous since 1977. And so we thought we'd start with these paintings with the notion that I will be going back in June. I have no idea what's going to happen. And when I mean confronting the muse, clearly this has been something that has been important to me in terms of issues of color and atmosphere and structure. The things I focus on in Italy are these odd corkscrewing kinds of forms and spaces that you get. Deep space, short space, color being manipulated by the light. And ultimately, it allowed me to move inside the subject matter, which is where I want to be. I'm not interested in, the least important thing to me about the Italian paintings, goes for everything else too by extension, is the record of the topography. Or if you like, the likeness of, oh yeah, I recognize Cortona. But rather, those things that are operating beneath the surface. Okay, got to do it. My students and my colleagues have heard this quote from me, but it's from an Italian, Cennino Cennini, late 1300s into the 1400s, egg tempera painter, painted little Madonnas, altarpieces. So that's the context. He wrote a book called The Artist's Handbook, terrific, short book for his students, giving them instruction on everything from the color of a virgin's cheek, what it should be, how you differentiate the virgin from the non-virgin, very important. So again, as part of the hierarchy of the world he's living in, to some really very, very sage counsel. Beginning of the book, he says, this is an occupation known as painting, which requires imagination and skill of hand in order to discover things not seen, which are hiding under the shadow of natural objects, and to fix these things with the hand to make clear to plain sight what does not actually exist. No one said it better. Everything I have read, that I keep coming back to that describes what I do. I read that, I said, yes, that's it. You're ostensibly painting a landscape, an interior, a figure. You're actually painting something else. You're painting that thing that you keep looking at so hard so that you can begin to see meaning in the way one color works against another. Not literal meaning, that other meaning, that thing that doesn't literally exist. And your job is to take things apart, as I see it, take things apart, put them back together again. In my case, I put them back together again in a way that they are a reasonable facsimile of what you might see, but hopefully not really. That there's something else that's actually going on. And what my work is going to look like next year, I have no idea. Each time I start a painting, I really don't know. As a matter of fact, working in Italy, tourists think I'm local. So they speak, especially Americans. So they speak freely in front of me. I can't understand a word. I hear really interesting stuff. One fellow with a party of friends was looking at me as I was painting on one of the walls there. I had my painting out there working away, and said, this is very interesting. Here we have an abstract expressionist. And clearly what he's doing is he's gaining inspiration from the landscape. And it's true. For a very long time, my paintings, as I'm working on them, are essentially non-representational. Because what I'm doing in the beginning is I'm trying to find those things that are not on the surface that have to be there. And then how far the thing pulls up varies. And if you look around this show, and it's not based on, that's why we didn't set it up chronologically. These are not changes that occur from 99 to 2009. They're changes that I go through each year. And I don't have a set point for a painting. The painting, if it's working, tells you what it wants. If it's working. If it's not working, you're doing all the telling. Not interesting. And those are the ones that really, they're just not worth talking about. So that sense of, as I was saying, they thought it was jokingly, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I welcome that. I don't know what I'm doing in the sense that I do not have a result in mind. What I have is, and what I love about really complicated things, like some of the places I paint in Tuscany, like some of the other subject matter here, like some of the still lifes where I set up 200 objects and I just start pulling things away. I mean, I never set up still lifes with the notion of placing them. I set them up very organically, and I just keep pulling things away until some kind of odd order that I identify with assembles itself. And so, you're trying to work with the notion that all of this complicated stuff you dive into and try and pull something back. And that thing you pull back, well, that's hopefully you. And so in that sense, you don't really want to know what you're doing. You don't want to be very predictive. Now, one of the big shifts in here, motif-wise, very little difference from my point of view, but certainly on the surface, are the still lifes. Those still lifes go along with the rest of these paintings. They're from 99 through 2009, and you can go back 30 years and you'll see still lifes. Go back 30 years, you'll see landscapes. The still life is my opportunity ostensibly to have control. Right? I'm not out there in the wild. I'm here where it's in my studio, and you can figure it out. It's cold in the winter, and I do some painting outside in the winter, but by and large, still lifes are my opportunity to bring the landscape indoors. But the difference there, because there is some modicum of control, is that you have a control as in an experiment, and then the variable becomes the light. The variable becomes a little shift in space. It's kind of like ramped down to a very, very fine point where a little sneeze, a hiccup, makes a difference. But I look at those characters as that. They're on a stage. I find them very political. My titles, unlike my landscapes, are usually quite political. They're making mischief. There are things going on. There are, again, qualities of animation that belie the relatively benign subject matter. At least that's what I'm seeing, when I'm painting. And when I look at still lifes, I'm really thinking about landscapes. And when I look at landscapes, I'm often thinking about still lifes. I know, it's this sort of contrarian brain that, you're telling me I'm painting a landscape? No, actually, I'm painting something that I saw that in a Morandi. I saw that in one of Morandi's little box paintings, the way he moved shapes around and the way the light worked. And when I'm in here, I'm seeing Raft of the Medusa, looking at some of the still life. The fact is that they're interchangeable in terms of substantially, let's put it that way, I suppose, substantially why I paint. So I'm certainly not going to attempt to take you through the motifs are there. There are different things that interest me where I find things. I mean, there's some of the Big Dig over there. I really love the Big Dig in Boston. It was chaos, and so that was one body of work. I've continued now to go back to Boston and work with. And it's sort of like a WASP version of Tuscany in terms of structures and red, a lot of red, and some of it gets, again, pretty chaotic. More chaotic, the better, because then, I have something that I can discover in that. I like working out in Provincetown. Provincetown, it's crazy. It's an insane place. It's like you're on the moon. The light comes in 200 miles an hour off the ocean. There's nothing stopping it. It hits those 2-story, maybe 3-story buildings and bounces around like a pinball machine. And you have no idea what you're going to discover from day to day in terms of color, shape, structure. So it's fascinating. And I return to places because I know them on one level, which means I will now be more surprised by how it's changed, not in terms of physically the structures, but I've changed. Each time I go back, it's a combination of memory as well as imagination when I'm painting. I'm not simply recording. So my memory of experiences past dealing with painting those spots also is part of the conversation. And each of these places I've returned to with that in mind. Each time I go back, it gives me a greater chance to be innovative. Again, maybe that seems counterintuitive, but new subject matter I'm attracted to. I digest that, I bring that in, and then if it makes it for me, if it really has that, if it has a little bit of muse in it, then it will be part of that, my wandering minstrel show, which I conduct as a painter. And the key for me is my car is always loaded. It's got panels, it's got paint, it's like an art weapon, and it's ready to go. And that is great confidence for me that at any moment, and my wife can attest to this, pull over to the side of the road. She always brings a book. So for her, she gets her reading done. And when we're in Italy, she actually, while I'm painting, will scout out spots. She knows some of the things that interest me, and she'll come back with a report. You really got to go over here. So it's, we really do, in that sense, work as a team. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. It's such a snowy day. Thank you.